What's up, everyone? This is Jakejames Lugo, and I'm back once again with another panel that I had hosted from UPLINK 2021. If you haven't seen any of the previous panels I've posted up here on the channel, I highly suggest you check out the playlist I have now, which has panels involving The Legend of Zelda and a whole bunch of other great discussions I know you're gonna love. But what you're about to see now is a panel that I had hosted with Starling, Patrick Hickey Jr., and Cottontail Gamer that talks about how games develop us. This was an interesting panel that really deep dived into a lot of our personal experiences growing up playing video games, and some of the actual titles and experiences we went through related to video games that helped shape us into the people we are today. There was a lot of discussion about mental health, about personal hardship, and so many more things related to the two. We really deep dive into this discussion and really got personal with everything that we mentioned and touched on. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this discussion we had. Here it is in its entirety. Let me know some of your thoughts down below in the comments section. Of course, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well for more videos just like this. I'll be back again real soon with some more stuff from UPLINK 2021 as well as other gaming videos I know you're gonna love. With that being said, I hope you all enjoy the video. Peace out and stay epic, everybody. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to UPLINK. We just started somewhat early this morning. Hopefully you all that have been checking out all the panels and all the other events throughout the course of this morning and throughout the rest of the day are having a lot of fun. And hopefully also you check out some of the stuff that you missed out on later on when all the archives go up. I'm Jakejames Lugo. Y'all could call me JJ for short. I'm one of your hosts for UPLINK this entire day for a lot of different panels. So some of you are going to get really acquainted with me as you guys check out some of the events. But I'm a content creator, I'm a writer, I'm a podcaster, I'm a host, as you could tell, and I love video games like all these other great people that I'm here with now on this panel. There's a lot of cool stuff we're going to talk about. Our panel today is games that develop us or games that are helping to develop us, and gaming as a coping mechanism, and teaching life lessons through games and other forms of entertainment that, we love to interact with. So I'm going to run through our panel now because we got a lot of great guests and we have to, keep on a schedule here. But I have first person, she's a longtime streamer. She does a lot of different kinds of content, big into RPGs, which is awesome. And she has a lot of interesting stuff with her background, professional with health. Okay, so say hello to Rabbit Plays Games. Rabbit, what's good? Can you hear me okay? You good?
Hey, I can hear you just fine. Good to meet you, JJ. Hi, everybody.
Good to meet you too. It's gonna be fun. We were hanging out before the panel started, and she's got cool energy. She's chill. She's great. Second person, we got Starling. Okay, he plays a lot of video games. He has a life balance podcast, or again, he does a lot of different podcasts involving, life balance, involving games, and a whole bunch of other great stuff. So Neo, welcome. Great to meet you as well. It's cool.
Thank you for having me. How's everybody doing today? Let's get it.
Oh, yes, it's going to be cool. Again, a lot of great people. And then finally, one of my friends, again, we've done some work together. We've talked on one of my own shows, and he's even written some books. Okay, he's doing a whole bunch of stuff. I see him always posting on Instagram, a lot of different gaming-related content. But say hi to Patrick Hickey Jr. Again, he does a lot of great content. Again, we'll probably get into it now, but you do a lot of stuff, which is cool. So welcome.
Actor, one of my games just came out last week. I play Paula Alexander in The Poultry, which is currently on Nintendo Switch, Steam, Xbox One, blah, blah, blah. So voice actor, author, content creator, journalist for 15 years, college professor for 15 years. So yeah.
Yeah, you do a lot, which is great. But again, welcome to all of you. And again, welcome to everybody else that's tuning into the panel as of now. So let's just get started with some of the stuff because we have a lot to really kind of get into. Okay, now gaming as a coping mechanism, okay, or gaming that teaches us life lessons and stuff like that, where a lot of us, including myself, really kind of had an affinity for gaming, especially growing up when we were really young. My first game was Sonic the Hedgehog. Again, I was a Genesis kid growing up. I was born in the same year that the Sega Mega Drive was first released in Japan. Like that's something that I connected with gaming for a while, and dealt with other types of life experiences over time, that have helped and enabled me to grow as a person, which is something very personal. And everybody has their own stories here. Stuff. Let me go first to Neo. Tell me a little bit about some of the stuff gaming growing up, or things about games, or just video games as a hobby that really helped shape you as a person. What's like one experience you could really think of that was like defining for you?
Oh man, there's so many. It's so hard to actually properly convey into words and articulate the way that video games have personally impacted my life. I would definitely say not Virtual Fighter, Fighters Megamix for like the Sega Saturn. That's a big one for me because the Saturn was sort of the underdog console during the time. Everybody was like rocking the PlayStation. That was like the spot to be. But that particular game had a big impact on my life just because of where I was at financially as a child. And, I had a lot of like experiences as I was getting older in my development where, we just didn't have any food to eat. Sometimes we couldn't pay the bills. And I kind of trapped myself in my room just playing video games because it was a good escape from the realities of the life that I had to endure. And Fighters Mega Mix is always going to hold that special place in my heart in particular. And many other games too, but that one specifically like fed me, when I had to like get rid of it, I had to sell it just so that like my family could eat for like a few days, and it was difficult because there was a catharsis in a sense as well, because I got all the mileage I could out of that game. And then once I got rid of it, I was able to pay it forward and help my family out for like that time. Now we're okay. Thank the higher powers that be, we're fine now. But at the time, it was definitely pretty rough. And that particular game has had a big impact on my life.
Do you think, before I go to the next person, do you think that that specific thing, had it not been there, had the Saturn not been around or not been within your vicinity at that time, do you think you would have been able to deal with a lot of that hardship, or at least, be able to get around it in the way that you did at that point?
Yeah, I think I definitely would have. Like I've always been pretty resilient. I don't want to like sound full of myself or anything, but children in general, like when you're young, you're pretty tough. Kids have tougher skin than people give them credit for, and definitely would have been okay. Like I said, that was one positive experience that I had, and there was definitely many others. Like RPGs as well played a big role, just teaching me how to read. Because everything like RPGs nowadays, everybody just talks. There's voice
a lot
acting.
of text.
There's voice acting now, but back in the day, that wasn't a thing. You had to read your games, and that actually helped my development. It helped my vocabulary. It helps my ability to be able to like read properly when school wasn't getting the job done. So you can learn a lot from games.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. Again, like you'd be rolling into English class doing good, and it's all because you were playing like like Phantasy Star, Final Fantasy at least 97 or whatever. But with Dreamcast or any of the other, or not Dreamcast, Saturn, with any of the other JRPGs that back there. So that's at least a cool thing to kind of think about, back in the day. But let me go let me go to Rabbit for a second, because I want to ask you again. You're someone, again, you're a big gamer. You teach health. That's something that's part of your life. The two of them together kind of blend together for you. Where did the two overlap, or how did the two overlap for you? Because when people first hear that at first glance, they're going to be like, how the hell do these two come together in vicinity? Because that, some people, doesn't make sense, but for you, obviously, you have a different experience than them.
Well, I think, to kind of even piggyback off what Nia was saying, I think there's a lot that you can learn from video games, and not just in terms of skills that are immediately applicable to the school environment, but I think skills for like processing and self-regulation. So as a child myself, I also came from a little bit of a turbulent background, just with a family that fought a lot, but we played a lot of video games. Those of us that did try to escape, like my siblings, and I was really close with my father when we were just trying to kind of isolate ourselves and really compartmentalize all of the chaos that was going on from the peace and the harmony that we were trying to seek out. So early on, I felt video games to be a really big way for me to process things that were going on, either through the co-regulation that I was receiving through the characters on the screen, identifying with different characters, identifying with the trials and the tribulations that they were going through. So there was a point in my life where I realized just how therapeutic video games were for me, and how much playing through, you had kind of mentioned earlier that I have a very strong affinity for JRPGs. And I think there was a point where I couldn't deny any longer just how effective video games were at helping me deal with a lot of just the turbulent waters that we were navigating in my personal life through my family. So it inspired me really early on that I wanted to help other people. And I remember having friends come over and play games with me, and it became a really huge social thing for me to do, to invite friends into my life in that way. And we would like talk about the characters, talk about their progression, their growth, what they were doing, what we would do differently, kind of in a almost like a weird role play sort of way for ourselves too. And then that just kind of set me on the path to where I knew I wanted to be involved either in social work or behavioral health. I mean, as you had kind of mentioned, I do have my master's in public and community health, and I'm a certified crisis intervention specialist, and I do quite a bit of work related to mental health, behavioral health, and physical health. And I credit video games to an extent because they helped me identify in myself how important it was to have a toolbox and to have some sort of thing that wasn't necessarily another person that could help you succeed and help you thrive. You can't always rely on someone else to be there, but by golly, you can have that Game Boy. So
Oh yeah, that's true. And again, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. It's very interesting that you mentioned a lot of that because again, with your channel specifically, you have a lot of Let's Plays, and again, you play a
yes,
lot of games that require a lot of time. JRPGs are not short games; like they take time. Like you got to sit down and plan a weekend to play
yes,
some of these games. But the good side about that, because you're spending so much time with it, especially a lot of narrative and plot driven
yes,
experiences. These are games that have characters and have stories and events that people could relate to. Like one of the things that I know that you talked about, or at least in your stuff, it was the passing of your father, dealing with stuff that is very tough. And, we have a lot of characters in JRPGs that, they pass, they die for one reason or another, heroically or tragically and stuff. Do you feel like whether it's that type of experience or another type of experience, can you relate like maybe one game that like had an event in it that you could kind of like, again, you connected on a deeper level because of something like that? Like for me, as an example, dealing with bullying back in the day, like I used to get bullied a lot as a young kid. And I think a lot of people, the stereotype is that a lot of gamers and a lot of people, we're socially awkward and we tend to be on the lower end of the social ladder sometimes. It's not always true, but for me, I had a little bit of that experience in middle school and high school where I was picked on a lot. I was one of the few minority kids in my school district dealing with that, within, that area. And one of the things that I remember relating to is in certain games, like, again, just dealing with a lot of adversity, dealing with a lot of stuff that's like, constantly being pressured for everything around that. And so just seeing how some of those characters go through and just like being able to sit down and talk about it or just like talk about it in my head and just like be like, come to terms with certain things and how to deal with it. But for you, obviously, it's a little bit much more deeper, a little bit more severe with some of that stuff. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. So I think a really good video game that I always loved as a child, but in recent years has really stuck with me, and I've identified a lot with a character is Legend of Legaia for the PlayStation 1. So I don't know if
Yeah,
any of you have played
classic,
through it. I see Patrick shaking his head, so
classic.
I won't droll on because we'll be here all day if I go through and recap the narrative. But essentially, the female protagonist in that game, Noah, like her entire journey is sort of it revolves around her trying to identify who she is, and through that process of discovering her past and discovering who she kind of wants to be and what she grows into, she's confronted with the reality that her family is suffering to a really extreme extent, and she's a young girl in the game. And there is a point where she does get a very brief opportunity to reconnect with her parents, specifically her mother, and then that's taken away from her as abruptly as it's given to her. So I think as an adult who has recently lost a parent, even though, I'm not 12 years old or however old she is, I would say I do still very much feel like an orphan, sort of as Noah is portrayed and depicted in the game. And I think the loss that she experiences and just the way that the entire narrative kind of builds up to this meeting and this conversation that she has with her mother. I tear up every time I replay through that game. I just feel like they did such a good job of humanizing this child character. And even though she is so strong and so capable, she's also very vulnerable and very loving, and a character that is forced, honestly, to grow past all of these struggles and all of this loss that she's continuously faced with. So I think just seeing the way that she is built up, and even when she's broken down, how it doesn't keep her from persevering. Absolutely, I identify with her as a character. I think she is one of my favorite female video game characters, like of all time, even though she's a 12-year-old girl. She's not sexualized, she's not romanticized. She is just a strong female character that has to fight to get what she wants, and then she still loses what she wants. Yeah, that's the game
That's
that
that's
I
a harsh
think.
life lesson. That's real
Yeah.
talk. Again, like I think that there's a lot of nuance with a lot of games. You know, again, with you with RPGs, but even in other experiences where that even sometimes there's not always a happy ending or at least a good outcome to certain things. That it's a harsh life lesson. Life just happens. I feel like with a lot of us, and it just
Hmm.
again you got to deal with it as it comes. Now I want to move over to Patrick because I want to hear from you because this is an interesting thing. Gaming for you, like all of us, and I can relate a little bit is a really intricate part of every aspect of your life. Like, I mean, I even see you on Instagram. You're posting a lot. You post stuff, obviously, you're a father. You post stuff with your kids. You do a lot of different stuff. Even your background now, could like, I mean, I got stuff in my back, but you got a whole wall of like retro stuff, which is dope. But gaming has really kind of like, integrated itself into almost every aspect of your life. Tell me a little bit about that, for better or worse or good and bad. I mean, how has that experience been for you for, as long as you've been alive?
I mean, I think for everyone, the key to like having a happy, successful life is to encompass yourself with the things that indeed make you happy. So I mean, for a really long time, I mean, I've been an educator for 15 years, and it's kind of been like one of those things where I've had other professors that were older tell me, "Don't tell your students that you play video games. Don't show them that side of you." And I just got to the point like 4 years ago, right before my first child was born, where I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna let it all hang out. Like I'm going to write a book. I'm going to interview video game developers. I'm going to tell the behind the scenes stories of how all of these great games were created, even the bad games, E.T., Night Trap. Like I'm going to find the developers of these games. I'm going to get them to tell me their stories because I feel like the creation process of these games and the stories that of these people that made these games and their trials and tribulations, living in hotels during development, like living on royalties, crunch, like working for 9 months straight, going into like a Starbucks and listening to people talk about your games and they don't even know who the hell you are because video game culture, like we don't make the creators the rock stars that they deserve to be unless they're Kojima or, David Jaffe. I wanted to tell those stories. So like when I started writing the book, I was just like kind of like, you know what? My Instagram is going to be more video game oriented. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to like Stone Cold Steve Austin says, true success is you being you with the volume turned way up. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to turn the volume way up. I'm going to be
Real.
like the coolest dad like that I can be. I want my daughter to like walk into a room and be like, my dad writes about video games. My dad's a voice actor in video games. My dad writes comic books. My dad does this. My dad does that. So all of these games that you see around, I have not sold a game since I was 14 years old. Since I got my working papers and I started working, I promised myself, because I went through the same things that, Nova went through. Like, if you got a new system, you had to trade all the old ones. You didn't get to keep, and it was just, and then if things were tight, mom was like, listen, you're not playing Super Street Fighter anymore. It's got to go. And you're like, Ma, they're only going to give us like $4 for it at Funko Land. And your mom was like, that's $4. That's 2 loaves of bread. Like, it's got to go.
No, that's real. I can relate to that.
I promised myself when I started working that I wasn't going to get rid of anything. So luckily I have an awesome wife that like gets it. And I have like over 3,000 games on 30 consoles. And like, I love being in this room. This is where I do my voice acting. I have a little Cinderella CRT TV in here that like I play all my old school games on. My daughter was playing, Mickey Speedway USA on Nintendo 64 yesterday on here. I posted some Instagram stuff. So it's like video games have always been like a part of my life. As far as like coping, when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to be born in 1983. So like right after like the North American game crash. 2 years later, I'm 2 years old. The NES comes out in the United States. So now my dad buys Nintendo. So like we grew into like the American 8-bit revolution together. So like my dad and I grew an affinity for games together. So my dad is built like Donkey Kong. He's like 5'10", like 280 pounds. He has like huge hands, huge feet. He's a scary, scary man. But I could kick his rear in ice hockey on NES and Tecmo Bowl and things like that. So it was super empowering, And then as time went on, my dad got tired of getting his rear kicked by the time we got to the Genesis. And then I got a PlayStation, which was like the first console that I bought by myself. And now all of a sudden now I could shape the games that I wanted to play. So instead of getting Street Fighter because my twin brother could play with me and the family could play together, I could say, you know what, I want to try Wild Arms. That game looks really freaking cool. Or, you know what, Die Hard Trilogy? That looks really cool. Or, so it's just every facet of my life, games have been around. Like when I first started college, my Game Boy Advance was with me everywhere. My DS was with me everywhere. My French coach helped me pass college French. When I first started teaching, oh my God, the first year was so hard. I would come home and I would play this, and I would travel to the wasteland, and I would just like enjoy myself. In graduate school, I would play New Vegas. Like, you know, when COVID happened and I was stuck in the house and my wife was pregnant with our second child and we were like stuck in the house, Animal Crossing, you know? So like we had people we have a 2-family house and we had people quarantined downstairs, and we couldn't see them in person, but we were trading peaches and oranges with them. So it's just like, I love video games. I love video games. I love what they can do for people. I love what they can do for society. They bring us together. They don't separate us. So it's like 2 people down here they could have voted for Team Red or Team Blue, and I could have voted for Team Red or Team Blue. And because of that, we would not talk to each other on Facebook. Don't follow me, blah, blah, blah. But it's like if I was like, oh, I don't like Legend of Legaia, which is not true. I love that game. We would still have a conversation.
Yeah.
If we have dislikes and disagreements in gaming, we still talk about it. And it just becomes this great conversation, and we end up liking each other even more. So that's the reason why I love games. They've encompassed every part of my life. And now I get to write about them. I get to interview my heroes that made the games for, like I said, for my book. Sorry, selfish plug. And now I get to do voiceover acting for them. So it's just like, this is like the story for me that I never, ever want to end. I want to be 80 and doing this and be like, I remember Fallout and 2000.
Retired and doing this stuff. Yeah, I can relate. Yeah. I can relate because a lot of that, again, the one thing about games, and I think there's something we should talk on, and I want to go to Neo because I think this would be a good way to transition into this, is that, I relate to a lot of the adversity stuff, like with the things that I mentioned before, especially with family, you know, because I think like sometimes, especially for us that grew up within that 80s to 90s era, that console wars era and stuff, a lot of people around us didn't understand what gaming is. And I think there's still a lot of people out there that don't, where they look down upon it in a way where it's not, even despite how much money, despite all the positive stuff that you mentioned, and despite all the good that could come from it, because I think we sometimes get a little bit too caught up on the nonsense in a lot of aspects of the games community and the gaming media, the bigger, greater discussions about video games as an art form, as a medium.
I mean,
I think that everything else, like, everybody gets too caught up.
And in academia, it's looked down upon. So.
Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned before, like, you know, not mentioning games. I remember hearing a story about a dentist saying that he can't tell his clients that he plays World of Warcraft because nobody would want to actually be a client of this, which is ridiculous, you know. But even then, it takes me back to being a young kid, you know, middle school, going into high school and stuff, where the people around me, like, they looked at games as a waste of time, and it was like something where you were judged and treated a certain way that was differently. And I got that from family too, sometimes extended family. So I want to go to Neo. It's like, tell me a little bit, because again, you mentioned about, you know, selling the Saturn and selling your games off, you know, to feed your family and to kind of be a little bit more stable and stuff. Was there at any point, you know, that they looked at as like something like that or anything else related to games that was like, okay, listen, this is the first thing that has to go because this is not needed for us. So this is not something that you really need to kind of get you forward in life?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. It was sort of a survival of the fittest kind of deal where I might have had this gaming console, but you know what? Maybe we needed those 2 loaves of bread, you know? So I did trade in that $4 game. This is what we would end up getting. It was okay in my personal circle of friends because we were all gamers, you know, but I did get bullied in school as well because, you know, I was super tiny, man. I mean, I was born in 83, just like Patrick was.
Yeah.
And, 83 kids.
So,
there you go.
But I was tiny, you know, and now I'm like 6'1", like 200 plus pounds. So like nobody really messes with me now, but I definitely did get bullied a lot. And you know what, being a gamer actually helped me in that as well, because like I wanted to overcome the adversity, you know, like when you play a difficult game, like I love Dark Souls, for example, because of how much it kicks your butt, you know, like, you're glad for punishment. It's like you want that early morning abuse so that you can get up and do what you have to do.
More power to you guys on that, because I had to write the guide for IGN on Dark Souls 2 Scholar for Sin. That was not fun. I did not like that.
No, that was actually my first Souls game. It was the second one. And I actually like it a lot because of that. But, you know, rewinding back a little bit, just in general, I did definitely, people did sort of see you as a social outcast if you were a gamer back in that era. Now it's cool to be a gamer. You know what I mean? But back in the day, during like the 80s, like early 90s and whatnot, you had these like grizzled vets that were like, what are you doing playing these video games? Go do something with your life. You're never going to amount to anything if you just like play video games. It's like, really? Because that's not the world we live in now. You can like, we live in a day and age where we have the internet and we have the ability at any given moment to learn anything we want. We can on our smartphones, we have more technology than like the first ship that went to like the moon. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
because of that, you have this ability to learn so much. And I think something that's very prevalent with gamers is their ability to solve problems and to just be able to adapt to anything, because you're constantly in a different world. You're not in your own real life world, but rather you're in a different world that you have to overcome, like with RPGs. I love JRPGs. Final Fantasy VI was my first JRPG on Super NES. And it was just so cool because you're just like in this brand new world. And even if the kids didn't think I was cool and, they wanted to pick on me or whatever, I was still able to go home and I was still able to just like play this video game and understand that eventually the more I played, the more I learned how to read because I played these games. I would put myself in a better position in life. And, a lot of people will still tell you, even nowadays, like I would say like the boomers probably, or maybe like early Gen Xers will be like, hey man, this is not the way, but they're only saying that because they've never known anything else. They've never put themselves in that situation. Like when the Wii came out and, they marketed it for children, obviously, but when the original Wii came out, you had grandparents buying it and they were doing that Wii Fit thing.
And Wii bowling. Yeah.
Yeah, you expanded into a completely different market. Like Nintendo was genius when they did that.
Yeah.
And I worked at Best Buy at the time. I was doing security over there. So like I saw a ton of like elderly people buying Wiis. Now, granted, you could say it was for maybe their grandkids or whatever, but they were getting down too,
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Absolutely.
That sort of like bridged the divide in a way, and now again, because of the internet, we can do anything we want. I do my podcast. I talk about health and fitness. I'm also in the health industry as well. I do IT work for a cancer center, and it's a beautiful thing when you're able to take what you've learned from your experiences in life and these games that you've played, and you're able to apply it into the real world. Like us right now, the people in this panel, if it weren't for the internet and if it weren't for games, we wouldn't even know or be able to talk to each other right now.
That's facts.
Yep.
That's 100% facts.
I
think also, on top of that, and again, in the way that I can relate, when we talk about professionally, I think that this is a great segue, is that, gaming for me has been one of those things where it's like I could take my passion for something that I've just enjoyed, but just spending time with like that, and turn it into something that at least branch out to other aspects of my life, and more, not just, monetary wise, just like you mentioned, building relationships, connecting with people that are over great distance because of the internet, because of games and stuff. I mean, how many times can you think of over the years where you were playing with someone over Xbox Live or PSN that you connected with and you built a good friendship with them?
Yes.
That's happened to me more than a few times. Like, I could think of like, just random times, like playing like Gears of War. When I first got my Xbox 360, or playing something random like, Street Fighter, or Mortal Kombat or Tekken, something like that on PSN. Like, I feel like that's a cool thing that it's talked about, but not given a lot of credit, or at least enough credit that I feel like could really, look at it as something that was like a cornerstone for the type of gaming and like, or, I guess you could say geek culture that we have now, like in 2021. Like, there's just certain things that a lot of us and a lot of younger cats take for granted and stuff like that. Now, one thing I just want to ask everybody, and I'm going to go to Rabbit first with this, tell me a little bit about something, maybe it was a game or maybe it was an experience in a game that helped, that was like I guess you could say not a fracture point, but like a point that really changed things up for you. Because I know you mentioned Legend of Legaia, earlier like that, but tell me about another game that was like, as you got older, when you were more mature, that really kind of like changed up something for you, as you started to become like a little bit more of an adult, or at least started to really kind of come into your own, building up a career, building up all the stuff that you're doing right now. Because for me, the one game that I could say that really kind of like really hit that switch for me, at some point, was probably Kingdom Hearts. Because Kingdom Hearts, I think, is a generational series for a lot of people, even though, again, it's really younger than a lot of other games. Because when you think generational games, you're talking about Super Mario Brothers, you're talking about Street Fighter, you're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, things like that were part of that 8 and 16-bit era. But I feel like also when you start getting some more modern games, there's certain games that just clicked with people that really define them. And I feel like for a lot of people, that was Kingdom Hearts. And for me, it was like really where, I started to experience different things in life, real, offshoot from that. Like, again, I started talking to people differently. I started having relationships with, the opposite sex a little differently. I started thinking about friendship and what it means to like have real friendships differently, stuff like that. So that would be that one for me. But what about for you though, Rabbit?
Oh gosh, that's actually a hard question because I feel like there were so many games that were
Mm,
instrumental in helping me identify what was going to help me deal with things going on in my life or what inspired me in terms of like creative pursuits or academic pursuits, even in high school and middle school. I think there are probably three that have really stood out to me. The Sims 2 and The Sims 3 were just huge and absolutely significant in terms of building up my creativity. And, I've mentioned this, I think, when we were off camera, that I'm a pretty laid back person. And I think, just the chill vibe of the Sim series, I think it contributes a lot to that because you just have these instrumentals playing in the background and it's like a sandbox where you're just given these tools and you're told like start building so you can focus on creating worlds, you can create stories. So again, if you like more of that role playing aspect because you're building a family, you can be as helpful as you want and inspiring for your Sims and fulfilling all their wants and needs, or you can basically be Satan and ruin their lives if you like a more villainous route. So I think there was a lot of complexity to, especially The Sims 2, with how dynamic the actual people were. So I'll probably focus on that as being the most defining for me. But that alongside
mm,
Animal Crossing, the one on the GameCube,
yeah.
was huge for me. And then Chrono Cross. Now, I know these all seem like very different types of games, I guess, but I think the thing that really overlaps them and kind of spearheaded my career in mental health, behavioral health, when I started playing a lot of those games, and I was very heavy in The Sims 2, I was very heavy into Animal Crossing. I think when you are dealing with any type of stress, or for, I guess I should say, with me and a lot of my patients, even, I think, you might hit this point where you either shut down and you don't want to process what's going on. Like escapism is a really big thing. I think
True.
that creates a situation where people do turn to different types of media, whether it's television or film or books or just even listening to music. So for video games, I think something that with something like The Sims or Animal Crossing or even Chrono Cross, what helps those games sort of stand out and what really helped me was that they tapped into all of your senses. And a really big tool that I try to equip all of my patients with is when they're beginning to have a panic attack or when they're feeling really stressed or depressed or anything else. The first thing you hear a lot of people tell their patients to do is like take a deep breath. And I do what I call the kind of sensory game, where I usually will tell them, okay, take a second, close your eyes. What can you hear right now? Identify just one thing you can hear, because this kind of shifts the focus. So think about games like, Chrono Cross or any game, honestly. When you think about the sensory stimulation that these games provide, it's actually almost inherently therapeutic, as long as it's not something, I guess, that's like really heightening your anxiety. But if you take a second, close your eyes and you tell a patient or you tell even yourself, like, what can I hear right now? Maybe you hear the birds chirping, or maybe you hear your dog chewing on a nylabone in the back room. With the video game, especially those kinds like The Sims or like Animal Crossing, the music is it's like ambient and it's soothing and it's calming. So another sensory thing might be like, what do you see right now? Like what's something that's in front of you that you like looking at? So with video games, again, a lot of them have very rich, vibrant color palettes. Certain environments are lush and vibrant, and that in conjunction with like that ambient music, it just, when you start focusing on these things and playing this sensory game with yourself or with other people, before you know it, you're focusing on those sensory pieces and not on whatever was escalating you to begin with. So I think like those three games, but I'll just focus specifically on The Sims. Like, it helped me identify that when I was feeling anxious about something or I was really stressed and worried about something else, throwing myself fully into this world and tapping into almost all of my senses really helped changed my focus from whatever my issue was to the beautiful house that I was creating with these gorgeous environments around it, or the soothing music, or fun pop music that I had the Sims playing in their house, or even just thinking about the feel of the water when they're getting in the pool that I built for them, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
not to go on kind of a tangent, but I think those three games kind of overlap and really helped push me in that trajectory.
That's cool.
And I realized,
That's
oh my
very
gosh,
cool.
yeah.
I dig it. That's some good ones in there. Patrick, the same thing to you. If you could think of like maybe one or so, ones that were like, that I guess you could say crossroads, or that big turning point or benchmark for you when it comes to this stuff.
So Rabbit mentioned she enjoyed sandbox games, and I love sandbox games too. But see, the thing that I used to do is I would make a non-sandbox game a sandbox game. Let me explain. So I spent a couple of years as an editor at NBC covering professional wrestling, sports, video games, and stuff like that. I've always been the type of person that loves like tinkering with games. So when you started to be able to trade players in sports games, I would spend more time modifying the rosters and like getting games like NHL 96 and NHL 97 or whatever, getting the rosters completely up to date and creating all the new players. I would spend more time doing that than actually playing the game. Then when we got to like the PlayStation 1 era, what I used to do in high school, and I went to a high school where I was probably like 1%, maybe 2% at the most of the white population in my school. And I was 6'3", and I was like the biggest kid in my neighborhood. But when I went to high school, I met kids that were 6'9", 6'10". Quincy Doobie, who used to play for the Sacramento Kings, went to my school with me. And he was a monster. He was super tall, super skinny, like a freaking tree. Oh my God. But I had nothing in common with these kids. But if they wanted the new rosters for NBA Live 98, I'd be like, bro, bring in your memory card. I'll transfer it to you. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, for $10. And they'd be like, what?
You're gonna hustle them.
I was selling roster updates for games, and like I interviewed Craig Broadbooks, who did all the NHL face-off games for the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 for my books. And I told him this, and he was just like, that's insane. He's like, that's crazy. He goes, that makes me laugh so much. So I still do it to this day with the NHL games, even though they have the roster updates. I like to go in and edit all the ratings myself, and like people will come over to my house and they go, man, your copy of NHL plays really different. I'm like, yeah, because the players aren't all like 85s. Like they're rated.
Yeah, right.
But so I used to do it with sports games, but the games that I had the most fun with are these guys right here. So this is Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 on the Nintendo 64. This is WCW NWO World Tour on the Nintendo 64. I would go in and I would create like entire federations of people, the proper move sets, the proper taunts. So I would have friends come over and they'd be like, let's go over to Brian's house and play No Mercy. And they're like, only if Pat brings his copy of No Mercy, because his Taz is the best one, or da-da-da-da-da-da. So I would make games that weren't necessarily sandbox games, by making them tailor as much to like the experience that I wanted to have as possible. So like now that I write books about game development, I love to talk to the game developers and find out the things that they did. And I mean, just silly, stupid stories like if you guys have ever played Mother Gunship or Tower of Guns, the developer Joe Mirabello, when he was a kid, he used to like to go all the way to like the corner of the map in Zelda to see what would happen. Or he tried to kill an NPC in Deus Ex by just like, grenade bombing the same place over and over until like the character literally fell off the face of the universe in the game. So it's just like, if you're one of those people, then you're awesome. And I feel like a person that has like a 9-to-5 job that doesn't play games, they're not as cool as somebody like that. So I would rather be around people like that.
Yeah. Awesome. That's crazy, man. Again, I'm going to give you the final word because, things are winding down and whatnot, but same question, think of a game, that again, same thing, benchmark, the life lesson, anything that you could think of.
Well, if you want to like transcend past original like NES and Sega Genesis, I guess we will get moving from like OG PlayStation and on. I would say Resident Evil was definitely like Resident Evil 1 for the PlayStation, not the director's cut, but the one that we got here originally. That was definitely a game changer for me in a lot of aspects of my life because like I'm sure a lot of us could relate to this. When we were younger, like we were afraid. Kids are afraid of a lot of things. We're afraid of the unknown. We fear what we don't understand. And usually when you watch a horror movie, you're very passive because you're not actually playing the movie. You're just like chilling in the background watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But you had agency for the actions of the characters when you played Resident Evil. You had these fixed camera angles, so you didn't know what was around the corner. And it was also one of the first games of its kind that looked that good for its time.
Yeah.
To me, I was like, this is as good as it gets. Like, my like 14-year-old mind at the time, I thought to myself, it's not going to get better than this. This is the future of gaming. Now, obviously, fast forwarding now, it's a different story, but it definitely did teach me to just like face my fears, because I was put in a situation where if I didn't have the proper amount of ammo or the herbs to like heal my injuries, my character wouldn't make it to the end. We had to face this tyrant, but we also had to face the betrayal of somebody that we thought was a friend to us, So like there were a couple of, even though Resident Evil's never really been known for its storytelling, at least early Resident Evil, there was a lot of lessons to be learned just from that original game. It taught you about friendship, it taught you about betrayal, it taught you about conspiracy. It just taught you to survive. You had to like manage your items and whatnot. But Resident Evil definitely taught me to face a lot of fears, and moving forward with my life, that was like my mantra, that was my philosophy. Like, I'm just going to go out there and do it. Like Patrick decided that he wanted to like write books and interview people. That's amazing, because you actually just you took the ball and you rolled with it. And that's the life lessons that I try to instill upon other people. Like when I do my podcasts, I talk a lot about mental health and fitness, but I also talk about relationships. I talk about video games. I talk about life, just life philosophy. And games like Resident Evil, and I would say Dark Souls. I love the dark games. That's like one of my things. Definitely a horror guy here. But Dark Souls also taught me to just like overcome and persevere in spite of everything that was happening, because that game was depression personified, and if you couldn't overcome this depression, then you were just going to stay stagnant. You would go hollow. Don't go hollow, my friends, right? That's what this guy said.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's real.
It's a beautiful thing, and I just want to say that I appreciate having the opportunity to like be here and speaking to you guys. I don't know who any of you are. This is the first time I'm seeing you guys. I mean, I did kind of stalk y'all a little bit on social media. I wanted to see what y'all.
We're gonna connect on Twitter. Don't risk destroying that. We all connected on Twitter. Like, watch, but yeah, again,
I checked some of your stuff out, and it's cool because like this is a beautiful thing. I like the fact that we are in a day and age, even with COVID going on, we can still get together and just have these conversations and just meet new people, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
That's fact.
I just want to thank you guys for having me. But
of course, that's awesome, man. Yeah, and again, with that being said, this comes to the end of the panel. Hopefully, again, you guys enjoyed this, this entire discussion. A lot of great people, a lot of great stories, a lot of great real talk from all of you. Okay, I think again, I appreciate every single one of you. Let me go through real quickly, where everybody can be found. Rabbit, where can everybody find you right now? Because you're on YouTube, you're on socials. What's up?
Oh, I'm sorry. For whatever reason, it delayed a little bit. What did you ask for my social links, or did it?
Yeah. Where can everybody find you right now currently?
So I actually don't utilize social media as much anymore. My work is pretty, it takes a lot of my time and it's pretty taxing. So YouTube is primarily where people can find me. If you just look up Rabbit Plays Games, I'm the one and only. But my specific link is, youtube.com/gamingIR and that's how you can find me there.
Nice. Go check out all the good JRPG goodness. Neo, where can everybody find you right now? Okay, your podcast, your social, where are you at?
If you search Neo Starling on Google, I probably pop up everywhere because I've used that tag so much. But specifically, my YouTube channel is just Neo Starling by itself. That's where I do my podcast. That's where I do my video game reviews and my book reviews. Also, you can find me on Instagram at Neo Starling, Twitter at Neo Starling. My podcast in general is also on iTunes and Spotify and Podbean, all under Neo's Corner Podcast. So if you just look up Neo Starling, you'll find me. I also have a Twitch channel there as well. Even though I don't stream as often as I used to, it's going to happen eventually.
Sweet. Yeah. And then Patrick, where can everybody find you? Because you got a lot, I know.
I have a ton. If you Google Patrick Hickey Jr., everything pretty much comes up. On Twitter, I'm ReviewFixPat. But the most intimate place to catch me is on Instagram at Patrick Hickey Jr., one word. And this is what we're going to do, special uplink. If you guys go to patrickhickeyjr.com/books and you buy one of these books today, I will throw in the first 5 people, I will throw in a code for the new game that I star in, Padre One Shell Straight to Hell. It's a survival horror action shooter. You will get that game for free. So 5 people. Connect with me on Instagram. I love to talk games. I post like crazy. I'm definitely going to be playing some WCW NWO in a little while with my daughter. She's probably going to kick my butt, but we're going to have a lot of fun. So Instagram, Patrick Hickey Jr. Let's talk. Let's communicate. That's what this is all about. Like, let's geek out together. Let's have a good time. We don't have to judge. We could just have a good time. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Facts. Definitely facts. And then, yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube as well, youtube.com/gamerswithgains channel, on Twitter, twitter.com/JakeJamesLugo. Same thing on Instagram, instagram.com/JakeJamesLugo. All of us, we have a whole bunch of different places you all can communicate with us. Let us know what you all think about the panels, as well as also what you guys are experiencing during Uplink and anything else related to gaming stuff. So thank you so much for tuning into this panel. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will talk to all of you again very soon. Thanks so much for checking out this video, everybody. I really appreciate your time and your support. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel when you can. Don't forget to leave me a like on this video and comment down below. And also, don't forget to check out my Patreon page. I got a lot of great content that I know you're going to love. There's links down below in the description box. I hope you guys have a chill day. Peace out. Stay epic, everybody.